My name is Andrew Collins. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in Eugene, Oregon. I'm not anyone important. I don't write books, I don't run a podcast, and I'm not trying to go viral. If you're listening to this, it's because I need someone to know the truth before it disappears with me. Because something followed me back, and every day, it gets closer. I've always had a thing for remote places. Quiet villages, abandoned roads, the kind of places where the wind sounds like it's trying to speak. I never chased ghosts or monsters. I just like being alone in nature, documenting forgotten landscapes with my camera. Nothing more, nothing less. Back in 2023, I planned a solo trip through the Patagonian Andes, specifically the Chilean side. The goal was simple: photograph pre-Columbian ruins and old mining outposts. I had an old Canon DSLR, a field notebook, and a drone that barely held a charge in cold weather. What I didn't have was common sense. I arrived in Koi Hike in mid-May. The air was dry, and the wind carried the kind of bite that makes your nose bleed. From there, I was supposed to follow a trail mapped out by other hikers toward a mountain valley near the Argentine border. That was the plan. But in a small roadside town, barely more than a cluster of stone houses and a single gas station, I met an old man who changed everything. His name was Matthias. I was asking about alternate routes when he interrupted me, eyes narrowed. "You're not looking for the old valley, are you?" I blinked. "What old valley?" He leaned forward across the counter, his voice barely above a whisper. "El Valle de los Ecos. The locals call it the Echoing Valley. They say it repeats more than sounds, that it reflects time, memory." I thought it was just local folklore. I even smiled a little. "Is it on the map?" He snapped, suddenly serious. "That place was closed off generations ago, buried under stone and ash. The few who wandered in came back different." I should have taken that as my cue to walk away, but I didn't. That night, I researched everything I could find about the Echoing Valley. It wasn't on modern maps, but it showed up in fragments on some hiker forums. Photos with strange blurs, posts that ended abruptly, coordinates that didn't match the terrain. There was one post that got me hooked. A blurry photo, taken at sunset. In the background, sharp, narrow peaks silhouetted against red clouds. In the foreground, a humanoid shape, long-limbed and shadow black, with too many joints in its legs. The post had no caption, just a title: "Don't listen to the rocks." That was it. 3 days later, I left the main trail and followed the old coordinates. The forest grew denser, the trees started twisting in odd directions, and even the birds fell silent. My GPS began to glitch, so I switched to compass and instinct. Every so often, I saw markings carved into the trees, circles inside circles, eyes with no pupils, and what looked like claw marks too wide for any normal animal. I reached the mouth of the valley just before nightfall. It didn't look cursed, it looked forgotten. A narrow crevice between two massive rock faces opened into a silent basin. Dead grass covered the ground like straw. Wooden structures, maybe old cabins, stood rotting under layers of moss. There were no trails, no animals, not even insects. The air was thin, dry, and motionless, like the whole place was holding its breath. And then, I heard it. A stone rolling downhill. That simple. I grabbed my flashlight and looked around. Nothing. The fire crackled behind me, but the sound hadn't come from the fire, it had come from the ridge above. Another sound. Whispering. But not in Spanish, not in English either. A string of syllables that made my skin crawl, like my brain understood it without translation. Not language exactly, more like thought, twisted into sound. "He has eyes, let him see. Let him see. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched. Not from one direction, but from all directions, as if the whole valley had become one giant breathing thing. By morning, I wanted to leave, badly. But when I tried to find the crevice I had come through, it was gone. Not blocked, not hidden, just gone. The terrain was different. The rocks had shifted, paths that led east now curved back west. My footprints were gone. Even the trees looked unfamiliar. I wandered for hours trying to retrace my steps, yelling, calling for help, firing a flare. No one answered. My radio crackled with static, but at some point the static turned into something else. A voice. My own voice. Repeating everything I'd said in the past hour, word for word, but slightly delayed like an echo bouncing off invisible walls. Where the hell is the trail? Where the hell is the trail? Is someone there? Is someone there? Jesus, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I dropped the radio. My hands were shaking. I set up camp again that night. I didn't know what else to do. I kept the fire high and tried to ignore the shapes I thought I saw in the tree line, long-limbed things, hunched and watching. Always at the edge of my vision, always gone when I turned. Then came the dreams. Or maybe they weren't dreams. I was walking through a stone corridor, walls covered in carvings of open mouths, all of them screaming silently. At the end of the corridor stood a tall figure with a head shaped like a twisted crown of bone. It didn't speak. It just raised its head and pointed at me. And I woke up with blood coming from my ear. There's more, obviously, a lot more. I'm telling this now because I don't know how much longer I'll be myself. Things are slipping. Memories, words, even time. I don't know what day it is anymore. Sometimes I look at the clock and the numbers are all the same, 3:33, always. I tried to burn the things I brought back. The stone I found, the notebook, even the camera. But nothing burns. I know how that sounds. I wouldn't believe me either. But if you've made it this far into the recording, then please hear this part. Don't go looking for it. Don't follow the coordinates. The valley doesn't want you to find it. It wants you to belong to it.
If you're listening and you think this is just a story, just a creepy little tale for internet strangers, stop now. Seriously. Because I thought the same thing before I went in. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was just hiking through some overgrown land full of old superstitions and bad weather. But the valley is real. It's not cursed. It's not haunted. It's alive. And it doesn't like being disturbed. And it sure as hell doesn't let you walk out the same way you came in. That morning, I must have spent 4 or 5 hours walking in circles. I tried everything, mapping my trail with stones, drawing marks in tree bark, even using sticks to make arrows in the dirt. And every time, I ended up back at the same dried-up stream. It was like the land folded over itself, reshaping while I wasn't looking. I remember looking at my compass. It spun slowly, like it was being pulled in several directions at once. Then it just stopped working entirely. The needle froze, then dropped, as if the magnetism just vanished. I wanted to believe I was just disoriented, that I was tired, dehydrated, that maybe I had altitude sickness. But nothing about my body felt wrong, just the land around me. You felt like I was walking inside a memory, one that wasn't mine. Around noon, I climbed up a ridge to try and get a visual of the whole valley. Big mistake. because that's when I saw it again. That shape. It stood in the center of the basin, maybe 100 yards from the ruined cabins, half shrouded in mist. Too tall, too thin. Arms longer than legs, bent outward at impossible angles. It didn't move, didn't shift. Just stood there, facing my direction. Even from that distance, I could feel it. That presence, like gravity itself had warped around it. I blinked, and it was gone. I scrambled down from the ridge and sprinted toward the camp. Something inside me screamed that I needed to stay moving or I'd be frozen in place like everything else in this dead valley. But as I passed the abandoned structures, I realized something was wrong. The cabins weren't in the same order as the day before. One of them was turned, like it had rotated in place. Another had a roof that was intact yesterday, now collapsed completely. This wasn't memory failure. This was reality rewriting itself. Inside one of the structures, I found something that stopped me cold. Carvings. Deep, crude markings across the inside walls. Not graffiti, not decoration. They were names. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All in English, Spanish, German, even some I couldn't read, scratched into wood, stone, bone. Some crossed out, some still fresh. And at the very bottom of the back wall, Andrew Collins, 2023. I hadn't written that. I swear to you, I hadn't even been in that building until that moment.
I sat down outside, trying not to lose it. My breathing was too fast, my heart thudding so hard I felt it in my neck. I thought about turning the camera on again, documenting everything, but I didn't want to draw attention, not anymore. That's when I saw the second one. Not the tall thing from before. This one was smaller, human-sized, pale gray, hunched over, crawling along the tree line like a spider with broken legs. It moved erratically, like it didn't understand how to use its own limbs. It didn't see me at first, but then it stopped. It snapped its head toward me, and I swear to you, its face was my face. Twisted, rotten, hollowed-out eyes, but unmistakably me. It let out this dry, gurgling sound, half whisper, half growl, and vanished into the trees. That was the moment I finally admitted it to myself. I wasn't just being hunted, I was being mirrored, copied. There was something in this place trying to understand me by becoming me. I waited until nightfall to move again. I didn't want to stay, but there was nowhere to go. I just walked, flashlight in hand, heart hammering in my chest. At some point, the air changed, got warmer. The wind picked up, carrying whispers that seemed to mimic my thoughts. I heard my father's voice, then my mother's. "You should have stayed home, Andrew. You were always too curious. You never listened." I ran. The trees blurred past me, impossibly tall. The trail twisted underfoot like muscle instead of dirt. I tripped and landed hard, face in the dirt, hands cut open. When I looked up, I was back at the stream again. I started laughing. The kind of laugh that doesn't come from humor. It comes from panic, from knowing something is broken inside you and you're just waiting for the rest to collapse. But then, footsteps. Behind me, deliberate, slow. Crunch, Crunch. Crunch. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see it. I just whispered, "Please go away." And the voice behind me said, "Low, thick, inhuman. You already asked once." I passed out, or maybe I fainted, I don't know. The next thing I remember, it was morning, and there was something in my backpack. A stone tablet, about the size of a book, covered in the same spiral symbols I'd seen carved on the trees. It pulsed with heat, like it was alive, and when I touched it, I heard a sound in my head that didn't come through my ears. A chant, rhythmic, endless. It remembers, it remembers, it remembers. I don't know what this place is. I don't think it's part of our world, not anymore. It's like a pocket reality, an old wound in the earth that never closed. Something was trapped here once, or sealed, or maybe born, I don't know. But I'm starting to believe what Matthias said. It repeats more than sounds. It reflects more than memories. Maybe it copies people. Maybe it replaces them. I don't know if I'm even real anymore. But I'm still moving, still breathing. And for now, that's enough.
When I woke up again, something had changed. It wasn't the sky, or the trees, or even the terrain. They all looked the same, like a still photograph I couldn't escape. But the feeling was different. The silence wasn't just oppressive now, it was expectant, like something was watching and waiting. The tablet was still in my backpack, and now it was warm to the touch. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to figure out what the hell this place was and how to get out. That meant going deeper, back toward the center of the valley, toward the ruins. The old cabins were just the edge of it. I followed a sunken path lined with half-collapsed fences, and within an hour I reached a wide clearing with what looked like a stone altar in the center. The air around it shimmered slightly, like heat waves over asphalt, but it was cold, freezing cold. The altar was cracked, covered in moss, but the carvings were still visible. Spirals, open eyes, figures with mouths stretched wide in eternal screams. One side was scorched black. That's when I noticed something else. There were bones beneath the altar, arranged deliberately. Not animal bones, human. I crouched to take a closer look and found a metal box tucked beneath one of the stones. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, half rotted, but still intact enough to flip through. It was written in Spanish, Old Spanish, from the 17th century, from what I could tell. I don't speak it fluently, but enough to get the gist. It was a journal. A priest, maybe, or a monk. And it told the story of the valley. It said the Mapuche had sealed something here long before the Spanish arrived. Something they called El Inverso, the inverse one. Not a demon, not a god, something older. Something that doesn't create, it reflects, mimics, corrupts. They believed it lived in the gaps between thoughts, in the silences between heartbeats. It was fed by identity, by memory, by language, by recognition. The more you understood it, the more it understood you. And once it knew enough, it could take your place. The colonizers, fueled by gold, arrogance, and religion, broke the seals. They thought the altar was a heathen site. They destroyed the trees, dug into the earth, and something answered. The journal entries grew more frantic after that. People went missing, came back, wrong. Some spoke languages they never knew. Some mimicked the voices of others perfectly. One man spoke only in reverse. The final page had only one line, underlined in thick, jagged ink. El valle no perdona, solo espera. The valley does not forgive. It only waits. I slammed the journal shut. I felt sick. Not just scared, violated, like something was already inside me, digging around. The whispers came back, stronger now. No longer disjointed, no longer vague. They said my name, over and over. Andrew, Andrew, let us finish. Let us become. I ran.
I didn't know where I was running. I just ran, through brush, over rock, past trees that seemed to pulse in the corners of my vision. I could hear footsteps behind me. Not many, just one. It didn't run, it walked. But somehow it always sounded like it was right behind me, steady, patient, like it knew I'd have to stop eventually. At some point, my legs gave out and I collapsed against a moss-covered stump, gasping for air. Everything was spinning. My head throbbed. I checked my watch, desperate to ground myself in something normal. 3:33 p.m. But the second hand wasn't moving. Just like yesterday. Or the day before that. I pulled out my notebook, tried to sketch the altar, write down what I'd seen, get it out of my head. But when I looked at the page I had just scribbled on, there were already words written there. Words I didn't write. We are the echo of your mind. We wore others before you. You wear us now. I dropped the notebook like it was on fire. That's when the light changed. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't brighter or darker, just wrong. Like daylight was pretending to be natural, mimicking what it thought daylight looked like. The colors turned off, muted. The sky looked more like stretched canvas than air. And for a terrifying second, I wondered if I had gone blind, or if the world had. Then I saw it again, the tall figure. But this time it was closer, just beyond the trees. Still not moving, still watching. Only now it had a face. My face. Smiling, but not like I smile. It was forced, like someone trying to imitate a human expression without understanding what it meant. My stomach turned. I backed away. It didn't follow, but I could feel it pressing against me, like it was in my skin, in my blood. I stumbled back to camp, if you could even call it that anymore. The tent was torn open. My food supplies were shredded and scattered. My sleeping bag had been folded neatly, placed on a stone like an offering. And inside it was a single tooth. My tooth. But I hadn't lost any. I reached up to check my mouth. Every one was still there. So whose was it? Or Or was it mine tomorrow? I wanted to scream, to lose my mind, but I couldn't. Something inside me refused to panic, like even fear had started to rot. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat with my back against a tree, knife in my hand, staring into the black. At some point, I swear this is true, I saw my own body walk out of the forest. Same clothes, same face. It didn't speak, it didn't blink. It just stood there for maybe a full minute. Then it raised one hand and pointed behind me. I spun around, slashing blindly. Nothing there. When I turned back, the other me was gone. Just footprints where it stood. Like footprints that were deeper than mine. Like whatever wore my face weighed more than it should. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. Time's broken. Reality's thin. Every moment feels like déjà vu folded over itself. The journal said El Inverso mimics, but I think it does more than that. I think it rewrites. Not just people. Histories. Maps. Memories. I don't know if I was ever alone here. I don't know if I ever even left Oregon. Hell, I don't know if I'm Andrew Collins anymore. But if I'm not, then who is?
There are moments when I almost forget who I am. Sometimes it happens when I wake up, if I sleep at all. Sometimes it's while I'm eating or writing or looking at my reflection in still water that doesn't ripple. There's this pause, like my brain needs to reboot, and in that instant, there's a question in my head that freezes everything. Am I still Andrew? And worse, was I ever? After the encounter with the double, the thing that wore my face, I started hearing sounds I shouldn't have been able to hear. Voices. Not outside my head, inside. But not just thoughts. They had tone, emotion. Some sounded like my mother, some like a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Others were voices I didn't recognize at all. They talked to me like I was someone else, like they'd been here with me this whole time. You're cracking, Drew. Let it in. You're not a guest here, you're the echo. It remembers you better than you remember yourself. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound came from under my skull, not through it. I wanted to believe it was stress, trauma, maybe altitude sickness, but that explanation was long gone now. The truth was much, much worse. I started avoiding reflections, puddles, metal surfaces, even the screen on my camera, because every time I looked, I saw something off. My pupils weren't round anymore. They shifted slightly when I wasn't looking straight. My smile looked too wide. My hands didn't line up right when I held them together, like one was copied slightly, out of sync. And then I found the photograph. It was pinned to the inside wall of one of the ruined cabins. A Polaroid, sun-bleached but intact. I recognized the person instantly. Me, standing in front of the stone altar, hand resting on the warm tablet. Only I'd never taken that picture. And I was alone when I found the altar. So who took it? And when? I turned the photo over. There was a message scribbled in charcoal. "You're almost finished." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the valley apart with my bare hands, dig until I hit the sky again. But no matter what direction I walked, I always returned to the same central loop. The altar, the stream, the cabins, the tree with the tooth, the faces in the trees. The silence. Always the silence. That night, I heard footsteps circling my camp. Not fast, not aggressive, just casual, like someone pacing or waiting their turn. When I looked out, I saw 5 or 6 figures, all of them standing still, unmoving. They were me. Different versions, wounded, dirty, some younger, some older. One wore my college jacket, one was shirtless and covered in cuts, and one was smiling, the same too wide smile I saw in the reflection. They didn't speak, they didn't blink. They just watched me. And in that moment I knew, this place doesn't kill you. It breaks you into pieces and keeps the ones it likes.
I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat in the center of my ruined camp, surrounded by ghosts that wore my own face. My eyes stayed fixed on them for hours, waiting for them to move, to speak, to disappear. They never did. But when the sun rose, if that's what you could even call the pale light bleeding through the clouds, they were gone. No footprints, no shadows, just the same spiral pattern scratched deeper into the bark of every nearby tree, and one word etched below them again and again: become. I tried to burn the photo. It wouldn't catch fire. I snapped it in half, and it reformed. Not immediately, like a movie played in reverse. The pieces hovered, then slid back together as if the damage was never real. The valley wouldn't let me destroy anything it had touched, not even myself. Later that day, I heard music, piano, soft, distant, and hauntingly familiar, a melody I used to play as a teenager when I still thought I might make something of myself. It was coming from the stream, but when I followed it, I didn't find a piano. I found a small wooden door built into the base of a massive boulder, covered in black moss and symbols I didn't recognize. It hadn't been there before, or maybe I'd just forgotten to see it. Either way, I opened it. Inside was a staircase, carved from stone, spiraling downward into pitch black, and from deep below, that same music, but twisted now, slowing, like it was drowning in molasses. I descended, not because I was brave, but because I was out of options. The air down there didn't feel like air. It was thick, wet, like breathing through fog made of breath itself. The walls pulsed faintly, flesh-colored, damp. I don't think it was stone anymore. I descended for what felt like hours, maybe days. My watch was frozen, my fingers numb. And then I stepped into a chamber, a perfect circle, walls covered in faces, human, animal, hybrid, all carved, all screaming silently. In the center stood a mirror, not glass. It was made of the same material as the tablet, shiny, black, and alive. I approached it slowly, and when I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I saw all of me, every version, child, Teenager, drunk college kid, photographer, broken man, corpse. They blinked, one by one, and then, together, they whispered, "Let go. We remember you. We are enough." I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got out of the stairwell. Maybe I never truly left. Maybe I'm still there now, just imagining this narration. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the valley. Alone. Almost. Because now when I speak, sometimes my voice echoes, even when there are no walls. And sometimes the echo answers. I still have the notebook, still have the tablet. I've written everything I can, drawn every symbol, recorded every voice. But the worst part? The silence is gone. Now there's always something whispering, in the rustling grass, in the space between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats, something that remembers me, something that's still wearing me, one cell at a time.
I don't know how many days it's been. The sun rises, but it doesn't move. The shadows don't shift. Time has become a flat line I can't walk across, only sink into. Food doesn't run out, but I still get hungry. Water never dries, but I still get thirsty. I think the valley is keeping me alive. Or maybe it's keeping something else alive through me. I tried to end it. I walked out to the highest ridge and stood at the edge, wind howling, rocks loose under my boots. I thought if I jumped, that would be it. But when I leaned forward, I opened my eyes back at the altar, back at the beginning, with the same ache in my legs, the same cuts on my hands. Even my boots were wet from the stream I'd crossed hours ago. Only now, the stream was dry. Again. That's when I saw the trail. A new one. It wasn't there before. I'm sure of it. It ran between two skeletal trees bent inward like ribs, overgrown, narrow. Animal tracks lined the edge, but no animals had been here for days or years. Still, I followed it, because what choice did I have? The air got warmer. The trees grew thinner. The sky, if you can call it that, turned darker, but not like night, more like a bruise spreading across the horizon. The farther I went, the more the valley started to change. No more moss, no more fog, just red earth, dry, cracked. And then, the monoliths. They stood like tombstones, but taller, some 3 meters high, smooth, black, covered in the same spiral patterns I saw on the altar and tablet. But these were different. They were moving, slowly, like they breathed. Each one let off a vibration you could feel in your chest, like a sub-bass note that shook your ribs loose. It wasn't painful, but it was persuasive. I kept walking. Between them, through them, until the ground dropped out beneath me. I landed on a soft, spongy surface. Not quite soil, not quite flesh. And in front of me was a door, human-sized, made of rusted iron and pulsing slightly like a heartbeat. Painted in large white letters, barely legible, "Salida, not for you. Exit,
not for you. I stared at it for a long time. It felt like the first honest thing this place had told me. I laughed. Or maybe I cried, I don't know anymore. But when I reached for the handle, I heard my own voice from behind the door say, "Please, don't let it in."
I froze. That voice, it wasn't a recording. It wasn't an echo. It was me. My exact cadence. My exact tone. And it was afraid. "Don't let it in, Andrew." I took a step back from the door. My hand was still outstretched, trembling slightly. How did it know I was reaching? I turned slowly, expecting to see something behind me, but there was nothing. Only silence. Only the monoliths, vibrating louder now, like they were urging me forward. The door pulsed once, then again, and I swear, it breathed. Not like a machine, not like a mechanism. It inhaled, and something on the other side exhaled. A low, animal-like moan, wet, tired, ancient. I stepped forward again, despite the voice in my head screaming at me. The air around the door felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. My skin crawled, my teeth ached. Still, I grabbed the handle. It was warm, like skin. I pulled. It didn't open like a normal door. It peeled open, like splitting bark from a tree. And beyond it, darkness. Not black, not absence, but the wrong kind of dark. Darkness that seemed to resist being seen. My flashlight flickered and died the second I pointed it inside. But I could hear movement, a dragging sound, like something too large to crawl was trying to move through a space too small. And underneath that, a whisper. Not in English, not even in sound. It was inside me, like a thought I hadn't had yet. You came to leave, but you've already been taken. I slammed the door shut, or tried to. It closed on its own, violently, with a wet thud, like a mouth snapping shut after a bite. The monoliths went still. The earth stopped vibrating. And for a moment, I was completely, perfectly alone. No whispers, no copies, no false reflections. Just me, or what I thought was me. I looked down at my hands, and one of them wasn't moving quite right. The skin around the knuckles was off, slightly darker, slightly waxy, like a mask that didn't fit perfectly. And when I pressed on it, it felt hollow. I didn't feel pain. I felt nothing. I don't know if I made the right choice. Maybe I should have opened the door all the way. Maybe I was meant to. Maybe the thing behind it was the real me, warning this version not to become what I already am. I don't know anymore. The valley doesn't give answers. It just gives options, and each one is worse than the last. Later, I found new markings on my forearm, carved into the skin, not deep enough to bleed, but raised like scar tissue. Not in English, not in any language I recognize, but I understood it all the same. You are not the first. You will not be the last. I stayed in the monolith field until night fell, not because I felt safe, but because I felt watched from elsewhere. And here in the center, surrounded by humming black stone, the whispers were distant. They were still there, but less eager, as if the things in the trees feared the ones beneath the stones. And maybe, just maybe, something worse is buried here, waiting to come out, or waiting for me to go deeper.
There's a rhythm to this place. I can feel it now, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. Slow, uneven, ancient. It doesn't beat like ours does. It's not life, it's remembrance. The valley remembers everything. Every footstep, every whisper, every thought that lingers too long inside your head. It catalogs you, and then it asks the question, are you worthy of forgetting yourself? I woke today with no memory of falling asleep. I was lying inside one of the cabins again, the one with my name carved on the wall. But this time there was a second name beside mine. Andrew Collins, 2023, and just under it, Andrew Collins, 2024. 2 different dates, same name, same person? I don't remember carving either of them, but the wood was freshly gouged. The air smelled like blood. When I stepped outside, the valley looked cleaner. The fog was thinner, the grass greener. The stream flowed again, softly. Birds chirped. It was wrong. This place doesn't heal. It doesn't reset. Unless it was showing me what I wanted to see. I found my journal lying open on a stone, but every page was blank. When I touched it, ink bled up from the fibers, like vein bursting beneath skin, and the words began to return, one line at a time. You're drifting now. Let it drift with you. Let the self dissolve. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from agreement. A part of me was tired of clinging to identity, tired of asking who I was, what day it was, what part of myself was still real. What if I stopped asking? What if I let it all go? That's when I heard it again. The piano. The melody was slower now, broken, notes missing, chords malformed. It came from the woods to the east, where the trees grew in tight rows, unnaturally straight, like planted by machines. I followed it, not because I believed in escape anymore, but because I believed the valley was telling a story, and I had no choice but to see the ending. As I moved between the trees, I saw shadows flicker just out of view. Not creatures, not reflections, memories. I saw my childhood bedroom, my first camera, my father's funeral. I saw the woman I once loved, her back to me, walking away into static. Each one faded before I could reach it. Each one left me colder, smaller. And then I reached it. A clearing, perfect circle, grass untouched. In the center, a spiral staircase descending into the earth, just like the last one, only older. Moss had grown along the steps. The stone was cracked, and beside the entrance, written in black ash on a standing slab, "The core is not sleep." I stood at the edge of the stairwell for a long time. There was no wind, no bird song. Even the trees behind me had stopped rustling. It was as if the entire valley was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd finally go all the way down. I did. The descent was longer than before. I counted 88 steps, then lost count. The deeper I went, the warmer it got, but not like sunlight or fire. It was a wet warmth, organic,
smelling of rot and copper and something else I couldn't name, like wet coins and old breath. The walls pulsed. No carvings this time, just veins, fleshy, dark veins throbbing slightly beneath the stone. Or maybe they weren't stone anymore. Maybe I had passed the last part of the world that was still real. At the bottom, I stepped into a chamber so vast I couldn't see the ceiling. Only the echo of dripping liquid and something breathing, slowly, far away, too large to see all at once. In the center was a throne, if you could call it that, made of bone and wire and shattered glass. And on it was me, or what used to be me. It sat slumped, unmoving, skin like wax, eyes hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. Its chest rose and fell, barely, but it was still alive, and in its hand, clutched tightly, was the tablet. Not a copy, the original. My head began to spin. If that was me, then who the hell had I been this whole time? The breathing grew louder. I turned around and saw the wall behind me start to move. It wasn't a wall. It was a face. Too wide, too old, too wrong. Its eyes didn't blink. They folded. Its mouth stretched open, releasing a silent howl that vibrated through my organs. It wasn't angry. It was hungry. But not for flesh. For thought. For shape. For narrative. For me. And then the whispers came again, clearer than ever. Thousands of voices, some mine, some not, some versions of me that never lived. They all spoke in unison. This is where you dissolve. This is where you end. This is where you begin again. I should have run, but I didn't. I stepped forward, toward the throne, toward the husk that wore my skin. And as I reached for the tablet, I felt my hand pass through my other self. Not solid, not separate, like mist made of memory. And the moment I touched the tablet again, I woke up. In my tent, sunlight pouring in, birds chirping, the valley still. Normal. Too normal. A stream flowed, the compass worked. My name wasn't carved in the wall anymore. It was like I had never gone down there at all. But I know I did, because when I looked in the mirror, I didn't blink right, and the whisper still lives in my left ear, always repeating, "You came back wrong, Andrew."
I left the valley the next day. No tricks, no whispers, no illusions. Just a trail that hadn't been there before, leading out between two ash trees split open like ribs. I walked for hours, maybe days, and eventually I saw the edge. Real trees, real sky, real light. I stepped through the last patch of shadow, and the world was there, waiting for me. Mountains, roads, cell reception, people. I was found by a hiking group 3 days later. They said I looked dehydrated, confused, dirty. I didn't argue. I barely spoke. When they asked what happened, I told them I got lost. They didn't press further. They didn't see the shadows in my eyes.
Back in the States, I tried to put it behind me. I scrubbed the journal, I burned the clothes, I smashed the camera. I threw the tablet into the ocean. But the valley came with me. It started small. My reflection would linger a second too long. Whispers would creep into the silence between dreams. People on the street would stop and stare at me with subtle confusion, like I looked familiar, but not quite right. Then came the photos. One morning, I opened my laptop and found a folder I hadn't created. Inside were dozens of pictures, all of me. Some were clearly from before the trip, some were during, but a few were after. Me sleeping. Me sitting at the kitchen table. Me walking to the store. All taken from angles I couldn't have reached, from places I'd never been. I went to the police, showed them everything. They ran tests, checked devices, investigated possible stalkers. They found nothing. Their final report claimed I must have accidentally taken photos and forgotten. I asked them how I took a photo of myself sleeping from across the room. They had no answer. I started wearing mirrors around my apartment, one in each room, facing every door. If something was imitating me, I'd see it. And one night, I did. I got up to get water around 3 a.m., passed by the hallway mirror on the way back to bed. And there I was, still standing, in the reflection. Not frozen, just delayed. It blinked after I blinked. It turned its head just slightly out of sync. And it smiled. That same wide, unnatural smile, like it was trying the expression on for size. I haven't looked into a mirror since.
I moved. Different city, new name, new apartment. No mirrors, no screens. I even stopped talking to people just to see if the silence would finally be mine again. It wasn't. It followed. Sometimes in the way people looked at me, like they were trying to remember where they'd seen me before. Sometimes in the birds outside my window, how they all watched in perfect stillness. Sometimes in my own shadow, which moved even when I didn't. And then, sometimes, it was worse. One night, I got a call from my mother. She was crying. Said I'd shown up at her door the night before, dirty, confused, smiling too wide, and refused to come inside unless she let me sleep in my old bed. But I hadn't seen her in months, and I was 3 states away. She swore it was me, swore it had my voice, my laugh. Even told the story I used to tell as a kid about the time I fell off the garage roof and said the ground bounced. She said something was wrong with my eyes, that they were black all the way through, that I kept staring past her, like listening to something behind the walls. Then she disappeared down the road. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. Every noise in the building made my skin crawl. I kept the lights on, played static on the TV, anything to keep the silence away. Because silence is where it waits. But eventually, I broke. I needed answers. I booked a flight back to Argentina, back to the valley. But when I got there, it was gone. The trail was sealed. No ash trees, no spiral altar, no stone cabins. Locals said there'd never been a valley like that in the region. They looked at me with pity, like I was grieving something that never existed. One of them offered to take me to a shaman in a nearby village, someone who deals with things that don't belong. I agreed. And that's where I heard the truth I already feared. She didn't touch me, didn't even look me in the eye. Just said one thing in perfect English, like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it. It didn't follow you. You followed it out. I tried to ask what she meant, but she turned her back, and in the mirror hanging behind her, for just a fraction of a second, I saw both of us blink at different times.
I don't dream anymore. Not really. When I close my eyes, I don't see memory or metaphor. I see the valley. Not like a flashback, like a location I never actually left. As if I've been standing in its center this entire time, and everything since then, flights, cities, mirrors, people, were just illusions flickering on the inside of its walls. A trick of the echo. I tried returning home again, back to Oregon. My apartment was still there, my things untouched, even the plants were alive. But the moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. The silence was too still, too deliberate, like the whole building was holding its breath again. There was a note on my kitchen table, written in my handwriting. I never wrote it. It said, "You've gone too far to go back. Let go of the shape. It is not yours anymore. You will remember less every day. That's not a punishment. That's a gift." I burned it immediately. But even the ashes whispered. I'm not being poetic. The soot moved on its own, spelling out words as it scattered. Letters forming spirals that looked like the ones on the altar, the same ones that once burned into my dreams. And for the first time in weeks, I screamed. Not from fear, from recognition. The thing inside me isn't hiding anymore. Sometimes when I speak, I hear a second voice beneath mine, just a half beat out of sync, like it's warming up to take over. Sometimes I catch myself doing things I didn't intend to do. Standing in front of the mirror with my head tilted in an unnatural angle. Writing in languages I've never studied. Smiling when nothing is funny. And once, just once, I blinked and saw my body still sitting across the room, eyes open, grinning. It vanished when I looked again. But I remember what it felt like I was the reflection and it was real. I've stopped answering calls, stopped seeing people, because the more I speak, the more it learns to speak like me. The more I'm seen, the more it figures out how to move in my skin. It doesn't want to kill me. It wants to be me. Completely. Permanently. And worst of all, it's almost ready.
I've decided to document all of this one last time. Not for clarity, not for proof, but because I can feel myself unraveling, and I want at least one version of me to remember what we were before the veil slipped, before we answered something we should have walked away from. The mirror in my hallway cracked this morning. I didn't touch it, didn't even go near it, but it fractured across the middle, a perfect spiral pattern, starting from the center of my reflection's eye. And my reflection smiled, but I didn't. I took a photo of myself, not a selfie, not staged, just a raw photo using the timer and a mirror behind me. When I looked at the result, I wasn't in it. Something was. A tall, too thin version of me. mouth open far too wide, fingers too long, eyes all black. But the worst part, there was a second me standing behind it. A regular me. Face twisted in horror. Hands clawing at the inside of the photo. Like I was trapped in it, screaming to get out. And the thing in front was smiling. Patient. Victorious. I don't know when I switched places. I don't know how long I've been the one behind the glass. I don't even know if the version writing this now is the original, or just a shadow made of memory and dust. But I do know this. The valley never ended, because the valley wasn't a place. It was a doorway. And once you open it, it opens in you. I've started seeing spirals in other people now. Little signs. A twitch beneath the eye. A delayed blink. Someone holding their fork with the wrong hand when I know they're right-handed. Some of them smile at me in passing, like we're in on the same secret. Like we've all been rewritten. I don't think the thing that came back with me wants to destroy the world. I think it wants to become it. One person at a time. One thought at a time. A slow replacement. Quiet. Elegant. Unstoppable. If you're reading this, maybe you've already heard the whisper too. Maybe it's in your static. Maybe it's in your mirror. Or maybe it's too late already. Because here's the truth. It doesn't come for you. You come for it. And it's been waiting.